Hi all, so the first thing we're going to do for our steampunk exercise is on your A4 piece of paper, if you have a ruler, just rule up the thickness of the ruler the whole way around as a border. So just on the inside of the ruler, I'm just drawing a line and I'm doing that the whole way around the page. And it's just going to work as a border for the entire picture. And then we're going to use this border to put our extra little items and trinkets in. For the main part of the picture, I'm looking at proportion here. And so in this section here is where I'm going to have the largest items. So today I'm going to do the snail in Steampunk. And the shell takes up almost 2/3 of the page to about here. So I'm going to put in some guiding lines first. So I'm going to put in from about 2/3 of the page, I'm going to put a guiding line in, just a very, very light one to know where the shell needs to stop, the top of the shell. And I'm going to put in another hill guiding line here, which is the top of the shell. And it gives me a bit of a tracker to know where I need to go. So I'm going to start with my swirl in the middle first. So 2/3 of the page. I'm going to stop my shell here. And I want it to have a nice curve to it. So I'm actually going to put the first part, I'm going to put the curve in of the shell. So here, I'm doing a very light letter S that doesn't have really a top or a tail to it. From that point, I'm coming over the top of the shell and I'm doing a big hill which is going to make the top of the shell. Almost like a leaf shape. Then I'm coming to the back of the snail and I'm going to tuck in my swirl. Here I'm going to put some guiding lines in because I'll need to know where the front of my snail face needs to sit. So I'm putting 2 guiding lines in here first. The shape is almost like a helmet shape for the steampunk. So I'm going to start with a letter C here at the top and I'm going to bring it down into a teardrop shape. So for me, this is going to be the shape of the face. This steampunk snail has a train feature to it and it's like an old steam train feature. So here at the front is the front of the steam train. So we come long line and an angled line. At the end of that angled line, we're bringing that line back in and this becomes a guiding line for us. In here is where I'm going to start to put some of my other features. So I'm just going to rub out any guiding lines I've put in at this point. And I'm going to start to put in a few more of the features. So between the back and the base, I want to include some lines that represent welding of some description. I'm going to give these a little bit more detail. So I'm putting a pancake ring around them. Now yours doesn't have to be the same as mine. You can add the details that are aesthetically pleasing to you. That is the things that you like. So you might decide that you don't like that look, so you don't add that on. I want this to stick out a bit more, so I'm going to bring it out a little bit more. I'm going to put an extra line here. And I'm going to start to put some lines down the faces, very thin parts that scaffold for all the metal to stay together. With steampunk, we want to see lots of metal. So to start to get a bit more of a feel of what it's going to be like, I want there to be a large eye. I'm going to do 2 slight lines here and 2 lines back across. Make sure they have a slight concave and convex to them to give a roundness to it. Then I'm going to put on the antennas, and I want them to sit into the face. So I do 2 small smiley faces, and I come back over the top to a point and back down. Back over the top to a point and back down. Then I can rub out those behind lines. I'm going to go onto the wheels, and then I'm going to come back to this section here because I haven't quite decided what I'll put in there yet. So here in this alcove here of this circle is my first train wheel, or cog, because steampunk is really a lot about cogs. So I'm going to put in some different size cogs, and then I can rub out that shell from behind. And then I'm going to create some cog designs. So the cog has a center part. So you can check the video on how to draw cogs, or you can just freehand them yourself. You just want them to have a mechanical sense about them. I'm going to come down to the train part now, and from this guiding line here, I'm coming down probably 1 centimeter, and I'm doing a backward C, and I'm going to bring this out to be the part of the train. Once again, I'm adding all that metal feature in. And I want to put some little bolts in between. Here on the shell, I want all of that metal fretwork, and I want it to follow around. So I'm going to freehand where I think it should go. And you'll see naturally with snails, they have a beautiful design on them. Almost like a brindle design. So it follows the natural curve of the snail shell around. But here in the middle, I want it to be a little bit more mechanical, so I'll put a screw just there in the middle. I'm going to add some extra items where they join. And you'll start to see with your own eye where there's parts missing and where there's parts that need to be improved. Because you'll look at it and you'll say, oh, it's a bit blank here. I think I'll put something in there. Okay, so I need to address this section here. So I'm going to put another scaffolding line in here, and I want to make it appear as though it's coming from one side of the body over to the other side. So I start from behind this line and I loop up and come down. And do the same thing again, loop up and come down, loop up and come down. Now obviously they're not just lines, they have to have a thickness to them. So here I'm going to start back up at the base and loop up and back, almost like candy canes. They loop up and they loop back because they're sitting, we want to show that they're sitting behind this line here. In this part here, I'm going to create a few more cogs that sit together. I'm just going to put them in as circles at the moment. And then when I go back to do the detail here, I'll put on time lapse to show you, but I'll just go through a bit more of a feature with this cog section here. In here, I want it to appear as though there's lots happening behind the scenes. So I'm going to have lots of lines working there, as though there's been lots of welding, things put together and put back together. This section here, I want to create a more pretty type framework. So I'm putting a few more lines in that you'd see on more older fashioned trains that have that pretty framework. Okay, I'm going to go on and do some more features. So I'm ready to colour. So the first one I'm going to use is a black pencil, and I'm just going to go back around because Steampunk really is using all those sort of browns and coppers and bronzes, a little bit of gold, and lots of dark colours to represent rust and the dirt and grime of mechanicalism, not so much the greens of nature. So I'm going to go back around. I went over it with a fine point marker, which you don't have to do. You can just go straight on with a black pencil if you want to. And I'm just going around and putting in a little bit of shade in spots just to give the picture a bit more depth. And particularly on any of those joining lines where I've used a bracket style feature to represent that there is metal or that there is pins holding the item together. So say for instance down here with the cogs, I want to have a really dark line, a shadow line on the inside of the cog to give it some depth as though it's got a width to it. And then on the outside here, I want to give a bit of shading to it to show that depth again. So I'm going to shade on one side of the cog. And then I'm going to shadow in around it. For a cog like this, once I've got the dark black on, or the brown, then I'll use a type of brown. And where the dark black is, I'll go over hard with the brown, and then I'll lighten it off to the other side. And I'll probably swap over and do a series of different types of browns. Because when something rusts, it doesn't all rust at exactly the same pace. So there's different colours in the rusting. So depending on your pressure of the pencils that you've got or that you use will depend on the colour that you get. So you want lots and lots of different tones for that one. Okay, I'm going to go through time lapse and put my shading in. As you can see, it's quite busy through here and not particularly busy through here.